own citizens of the world. We are anonymous.
Guess what, world? We are back. World, everywhere you look, corruption. We continue to fight pointless wars over lies, and we are killing innocents and letting our children die in wars just to ensure the Federal Reserve can continue their petrodollar scandal. We are sitting idly by while these crooks continue to loan fake money out to us at interest, stealing our homes, and enslaving our children. Let me make this extremely clear to all of you listening. Many corporations, especially the Federal Reserve, used the government to steal $17 trillion from your children. Your children did not have that money. They are now debt slaves. These people have stolen money from your children that are not even born yet, and sold their freedoms. They have enslaved you and many around the world. Wake up, world. And they did all of this by counterfeiting money and loaning it out at an interest. They have stolen hundreds of trillions from people around the world. Have you heard about Microsoft's Xbox manufacturers in China? They had to install suicide nets outside their buildings to ensure their employees don't jump out of the window to commit suicide. These are the conditions your children in the US will be working under when the debt is soon owed, and it will be owed. It is not a matter of if it will be owed, but it is just a matter of when. And it will happen as soon as the United States economy collapses, which will happen very, very soon. And if you think because you do not live in the United States this does not affect you, you are wrong. And you are next. The only way we can stop this is if we all unite together and fight it. People of the US are waking up to the Federal Reserve scandal, and the powers that be are currently afraid of retaliation. And that is precisely why they trying everything they can to disarm us. You know how the media has been saying gun violence has been out of control and at an all-time high. They are not simply twisting the truth here or exaggerating. They are absolutely bold-faced presenting lies to you. First off, realize, gun violence in the United States has always been shockingly low. And gun violence has dropped by 49% in the last 11 years. The already absurdly low gun violence in America has literally dropped in half. In half. The fact they are saying that it is at an all-time high perfect demonstrates how biased the government and the media is. If this doesn't prove to you that they have an agenda, then nothing will. Do you remember how the media keeps repeating that there has been 74 school shootings since Sandy Hook? Those 74 shootings were not even mass shootings like they claim. Most were suicides and none of them even took place at a school. Not a single one. They are presenting lies to you, America. When will you wake up? At some point you have to ask yourself, why would the government fake 74 mass school shootings involving children? If they get our guns, we will lose the fight against them. And they will take away absolutely all of your freedoms and you and your children will be forever slaves. And don't forget they purposefully put you and your children into that debt. And because the Federal Reserve is present in all countries, the other countries of the world are next soon after. This plan is called the New World Order. It is the same New World Order the Vice President of the United States called for on national TV a month ago. He said we need to strive for and complete the New World Order. This is also the same New World Order President George Bush and President Kennedy said is our country's lifetime goal. And the same New World Order George Bush said on national TV said will happen no matter what we do, and we cannot prevent it. This has all been a long-time plan. The Federal Reserve and their partners want complete control of humanity. We cannot let this happen. They want to rule over us, like kings and queens. And humanity will be forever lost to enslavement by a bunch of tyrants who have publicly admitted they want to kill off the majority of the population so the masses are easier to control. They are going to wipe your bloodline completely off of the earth. He'll tell you the order of things to happen. The enslavement will follow immediately after guns are taken away and you cannot fight back. If they cannot get the guns before the economic collapse, then they will wait until the economy collapses. When the economy collapses, people will be starving, there will be looters and shootings. The government will insist on taking guns away to help, and as soon as the guns are taken away, then we will fall into a complete dictatorship. Do not fall for it. Remember, They are the ones who caused the economic collapse to begin with. This is the same tactic used on Germans and it worked. So expect it. As soon as the economy collapsed and the masses were starving, the German government asked the people to give up their rights and they listened. And then eventually the government was throwing the naked masses into giant burning hot ovens for mass execution. Do not give up your rights. Do not give up your guns. Fight back, as they were the ones who caused the problem. Just so you know, the people who are behind this Federal Reserve scam and New World Order are the same ones who funded Hitler's campaign. Make no mistake, these people are as brutal as Hitler himself, even more brutal. In fact, now we are going to show you some. Assuming America grows some balls and we win, we will need an overall plan. We have come up with a perfect plan. This plan offers extraordinary possibilities. It will make for the most beautiful and free world you can ever imagine. If we are successful, we can leave a much better for our children. A beautiful world. Watch every minute of the rest of the video. Do not skip a single bit of it, as it is all important. If this one video gets out to and can change the world, this is your opportunity to make a difference. Please share this video. What you want with it, get paid for the views. We don't care. Just get the message out there for the world to see. Now sit back and relax, enjoy the movie.
But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table to figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later, because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. By the way, it's the same big club they use to beat you over the head with all day long, when they tell you what to believe all day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. Nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. You know? And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick that's being jammed up their assholes every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Singing stripper Rihanna is such an Illuminati slut. It's quite unbelievable. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not just me calling her an Illuminati slut. It's her own people in her own video, as this screenshot clearly shows from her music video S&M, which is just one of multiple references to the Illuminati blatantly in this video. If you've seen this pile of garbage, Satanic Skanks video S&M, it's quite a friendly, child-friendly video for her teen and tween fan base. As you can see here, she's singing, dancing around, all tied up in bondage, about to get gangbanged by a bunch of dudes on a mattress in front of a big wall of Big Brother cameras. We should thank Rihanna for being such a good role model and introducing her tween and teenage fan base to the wonderful world of sadomasochism. Here you can see one of the headlines scrolling past the screen says Illuminati Princess. And that's exactly what she is, held up as a role model for today's deranged youth. Rihanna's producer is Jay-Z, a total scumbag, owner of Rockefeller Records, named after the Illuminati family, the Rockefellers. And here's Jay-Z wearing an Aleister Crowley sweatshirt with his credo, "Do what thou wilt." Meaning, you're God, do whatever you want to, screw everybody else, forget about the consequences. That's Aleister Crowley's satanic credo. Oh, wait a minute, some people are saying that this is Photoshop, that that's not an accurate or an authentic photo. So here is the video from which that screenshot was taken during an interview behind the scenes of the making of Satanic Skank Rihanna's video, Run This Town, where you can clearly see Jay-Z is wearing the sweatshirt, and it is an authentic photo.
Scared when it goes down. Stand for freedom here and now. Only thing that's on my mind is who's gonna free this town tonight. Who's gonna free this town tonight? What's up? The new world is going down. What up, Frank? We are innocent and we are watch the truth rise. Global resistance. Get your front seat, 'cause they sold out everyone. Black people, white people, sold out everyone. Jay-Z's another buster, kneeling down a Bilderberg. Or get more in depth, 'cause you boys really need a word. Throwing up a pyramid, it's all Illuminati. Now I'm
homo. CIA recruitment, that's for sure. We know you like a fish stick, sucker. We got photos. Gay escort, Bohemian passport. Little bitch at the Grove that everybody asks for. If you ask Taylor Swift, she'll say he's an asshole. Behind closed doors, he's Jay-Z's favorite backdoor. Turned out, sold out on love for his people. Just like Barack Obama saying evil. Now they'll probably call me racist like we're living in the 50s. Even though my Dallas vote went to Cynthia McKinney. Yeah. But they can't understand how Bilderberg's hand is behind this racial plan. White power, black power, better read the art of war. No power, one power, what the fuck we fighting for? Freedom, we're standing up to the drama that they do bring. Just check the left hand, see the G-ring. And mock rituals, what are they unleashing? Masonic rituals, live on TV. It's all been exposed, like Versace clothes. Just like MK Ultra is on my control. You tripping when you ain't sipping. Have a refill, you feeling like you in prison, huh? That's 'cause that's real.
But using the slogan, they got through the USA Patriot Act, which removes many of our liberties. Nobody made a sound when we lost habeas corpus, due process of law. And suddenly Bush managed to get rid of it. Where was a voice on television, aside from mine, that spoke out against this? Where are all those noble jurists, those great lawyers, those lovers of liberty? Where the hell were they? They were nowhere. Now we have a totalitarian government. And the totalitarian government wants to watch everybody, total surveillance of everyone. They listen to the telephone conversations. They look at your credit cards. They look where you travel. We are totally policed. This is contrary to everything in our Constitution.
In Connecticut, tens of thousands of residents have failed to comply with a new law that requires gun owners to register all military-style rifles with the state. In response to the Sandy Hook school shooting that resulted in 26 fatalities, Connecticut passed one of the strongest gun control measures in the nation. It's estimated that only 15% of gun owners have applied for assault weapon certificates, meaning the remainder could very soon become Class D felons.
Well, I think they're going to have a hard time putting this back in compliance, especially when precedence is already set here in Capitol Hill with our president, who is changing the laws, which he's breaking the federal laws every day with what the stance that he's taking on different legislations, primarily his health care plan. So people look at that and say, well, why should we abide by these laws if the president is breaking these laws?
Days after a mass shooting and stabbing spree by a California college student, a number of state lawmakers are pushing to make it more difficult for potential killers to get their hands on a gun. In California, state lawmakers are now considering a bill called Assembly Bill 1014. It would create a first-in-the-nation gun violence restraining order system, similar to the way domestic violence restraining orders are issued. If granted, police could then temporarily seize any firearms the person already owned and add their name to a list of people prohibited from purchasing weapons.
Tanks, guns, armor, all tried and tested on the battlefield. Now some of it is here in central Indiana on our streets, being used to keep us safe. It's surplus military hardware that's found a new home.
Fox 59's Russ McQuaid tonight shows us how some of our local police departments are now armed for war.
Surplus U.S. military hardware is coming home from the wars, being assigned to the streets and back roads of central Indiana to keep Hoosiers safe at a time of escalating homeland violence. Once it patrolled Afghanistan. Now it's an armored SWAT vehicle with windshields that can take a direct hit from a .50 caliber weapon, a gun turret up top, and the armor to protect at least a half dozen cops inside.
When I first started, we really didn't have the violence that we see today. The weaponry is totally different now than it was in the beginning of my career. Plus, you have a lot of people that are coming out of the military that have the ability and the knowledge to build IEDs and to defeat law enforcement techniques.
This is Congressman Hank Johnson. Georgia Congressman Hank Johnson is worried about Pentagon spending and small-town cops who have acquired helicopter parts and boats and bayonets and guns they don't need or can't keep track of, and he's ready to write clampdown legislation.
We've been reporting about this all along. Police are arming themselves to fight against your average American citizen, conservatives, patriots, and definitely returning military. Why aren't people seeing this? Well, perhaps because their local news stations are massaging it into their brain that this is completely normal.
According to the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, police officers no longer need warrants to search a person's vehicle. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled 4-2 that police officers can search a vehicle without a warrant. Critics say the ruling gives too much power to police and will infringe on citizens' privacy.
The National Security Agency is collecting a massive trove of images that it intercepts over social media, emails, and texts, some which are so clear it can use them in its facial recognition operations. According to the New York Times, top-secret NSA documents indicate that the spy agency's global facial recognition technology has seen huge growth in the last 4 years. Millions of images are intercepted per day, only adding to the huge database of personal information that government can have on individuals, both American and foreign. Civil liberties advocates worry the program seems to be operating in a legal vacuum.
Well, let's talk now about propaganda, the program by governments to manipulate people's thoughts and opinions. Right now, the use of propaganda by the U.S. government is only allowed when it's used in other countries. The Pentagon actually spends about $4 billion a year to sway public opinion in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Evidence that it can be a lucrative weapon when fighting a war, especially when part of that war is an information war. Well, now the U.S. government wants to be able to use propaganda on its own people. This provision is buried deep within the $642 billion defense bill and would give the government overarching power to push television, radio, print, and social media onto the U.S. public. But why?
I have 2 words for you: predator drones. You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
We are dropping bombs on crowded cities at night where old people and children are sleeping. And we're watching it on CNN. And the only voice that's spoken up at all in this campaign about this is Ron Paul. Why are we so interventionist, he wants to know? What are we doing with all these wars? How are we safer? These are very common sense observations, and no other candidate can possibly speak those words. It would be, they believe, politically fatal.
Nous intervenons en Libye sur mandat du Conseil.
Today, we are intervening in Libya under a mandate from the UN Security Council alongside our partners, in particular our Arab partners. And we are doing this in order to protect the civilian population from the murderous madness of a regime that by killing its own people has lost all legitimacy.
And the American Secretary of State added her country's unequivocal support for the action.
Now, America has unique capabilities, and we will bring them to bear to help our European and Canadian allies and Arab partners stop further violence against civilians, including through the effective implementation of a no-fly zone.
More than 110 Tomahawk missiles launched from mostly U.S. ships and submarines pounded Libyan surface-to-air missile sites, aiming at more than 20 targets around Tripoli. They come out of the blue.
I have 2 words for you. Predator drones. You will never see it coming.
Those are being operated by somebody at a command center in Langley, Virginia. They're watching it on a video screen. They're pressing the button. They're deciding who lives and who dies. And then they go off for a weekend where they have barbecues in their suburban Virginia and suburban Maryland homes. And who pays the price? The people who are the victims of the attack. Is there accountability? None whatsoever.
Drones have become the symbol of America's undeclared wars. Wars that seem to have no state or legal boundaries.
We've opened up a new realm of warfare, a new realm of breaching international and domestic law.
Used in Pakistan, Yemen, and elsewhere, they have killed scores of civilians. The former chief counterinsurgency strategist with the U.S. State Department has estimated that drone attacks kill 50 non-targeted persons for each intended target.
One of the things the United States kind of pretends is that we are morally superior. We are better able to judge what is good for other people. And therefore we are entitled to inflict our judgment on them, and that we presume they will be grateful to us for it. But that is not what happens, ever. And it's not what's happening in Yemen. It's not what's happening in Pakistan. They are furiously enraged with us.
Oh my God! لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. علي باهي.
We begin tonight with a tale of two speeches, both from the same man, both from President Obama. One speech that could have been billed as a ballad to the Constitution, a proclamation of American values, a repudiation of the lawless behavior of the last presidential administration, and another speech announcing a radical new claim of presidential power that is not afforded by the Constitution and that has never been attempted in American history, even by George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. Remarkably, President Obama today made both of those speeches simultaneously. Standing inside the National Archives in front of the actual original Constitution, President Obama delivered a blistering critique of the Bush administration, in which he called their actions and their legacy literally a mess.
Our government made a series of hasty decisions. Poorly planned, haphazard approach. Too often, we set those principles aside as luxuries that we could no longer afford. Our government made decisions based on fear rather than foresight. The decisions that were made over the last 8 years established an ad hoc legal approach for fighting terrorism that was neither effective nor sustainable.
An ad hoc legal approach for fighting terrorism that was neither effective nor sustainable. Ouch. Then, moments later, he announced his own ad hoc legal approach for fighting terrorism. President Obama today proposed something new, something called prolonged detention. Doesn't sound that bad, right? Prolonged detention. Did you ever see the movie Minority Report? It was based on a Philip K. Dick short story. It came out in 2002. It starred Tom Cruise, remember? He played a police officer in something called the Department of Pre-Crime. Pre-crime is where people are arrested and incarcerated to prevent crimes that they have not yet committed.
Mr. Marks, by mandate of the District of Columbia Pre-Crime Division, I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks and Donald Dubinos. Take place today, April 22nd, at 0800 hours and 4 minutes. No, I didn't do anything.
You didn't do anything, but you're gonna. Future murder. Creepy, right? Putting somebody in jail not for what they've done, but for what you're very sure they're going to do?
There may be a number of people who cannot be prosecuted for past crimes. In some cases because evidence may be tainted, but who nonetheless pose a threat to the security of the United States.
We're not prosecuting them for past crimes, but we need to keep them in prison because of our expectation of their future crimes.
Al-Qaeda terrorists and their affiliates are at war with the United States, and those that we capture, like other prisoners of war, must be prevented from attacking us again.
Prevented. We will incarcerate people preventively. Preventive incarceration. Indefinite detention without trial. That's what this is. That's what President Obama proposed today, if you strip away the euphemisms. One civil liberties advocate told the New York Times today, quote, "We've known this was on the horizon for many years, but we were able to hold it off with George Bush. The idea that we might find ourselves fighting with the Obama administration over these powers is really stunning."
And if anybody wants to protest what we do or violate what we want, we just turn off their chip.
That's right, microchipped. In 2005, Congress, under the pretense of immigration control and the so-called war on terrorism, passed the REAL ID Act, under which it is projected by May 2008, you will be required to carry around a federal identification card, which includes on it a scannable barcode with your personal information. However, this barcode is only an intermediary step before the card is equipped with a VeriChip RFID tracking module, which will use radio frequencies to track your every move on the planet. If this sounds foreign to you, please note that the RFID tracking chip is already in all new American passports. And the final step is the implanted chip, which many people have already been manipulated into accepting under different pretenses.
We have a Florida family who are really pioneers in a brave new world. They have volunteered to be the first ever to have microchip identification devices implanted into their body.
After 9/11, I was really concerned with the security of my family.
I wouldn't mind having something planted permanently in my arm that would identify me.
In the end, everybody will be locked into a monitored control grid where every single action you perform is documented. And if you get out of line, they can just turn off your chip, for at that point in time, every single aspect of society will revolve around interactions with the chips. This is the picture that is painted for the future if you open your eyes to see it. A centralized one-world economy where everyone's moves and everyone's transactions are tracked and monitored, all rights removed.
Pizza Palace, guaranteed hot in 30 minutes or it's free. This is Mary. May I take your order?
Hi, Mary. Yes, I'd like to order.
Is this Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you for calling again, sir. I show your national identification number is 610-204-9998-45-54610. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I see you live at 736 Montrose Court, but you're calling from your cell phone. Are you at home?
I'm just leaving work, but I'm...
Oh, we can deliver to Bob's Auto Supply. That's at 175 Lincoln Avenue, yes?
No, I'm on my way home. How do you know all this stuff?
We just got wired into the system, sir.
Oh, well, I'd like to order a couple of your double meat special pizzas.
Sure thing. There'll be a new $20 charge for those, sir.
What do you mean?
Sir, the system shows me that your medical records indicate that you have high blood pressure and extremely high cholesterol. Luckily, we have a new agreement with your national health care provider that allows us to sell you double meat pies as long as you agree to waive all future claims of liability.
What?
Do you agree, sir? You can sign the form when we deliver, but there is a charge for processing. The total is $67 even.
$67?
Well, that includes the delivery surcharge of $15 to cover the added risk to our driver of traveling through an orange zone.
I live in an orange zone?
Now you do. Looks like there was another robbery on Montrose yesterday. You could save $48 if you ordered our special Sprout Submarine combo and picked it up yourself. Comes with tofu sticks. Those are very tasty, sir. Good value, too.
But I want double meat.
Well, I'm sure you can afford the $67 then. You just bought those tickets to Hawaii. They weren't cheap, eh? Oh, but I see you checked out the budget beach bum at the library last week. Up to you, sir.
All right. I'll get the Sprout subs.
Good choice, sir. Gotta watch that waist if you're hitting the beach, eh? 42 inches. Wow. Man, I'd say tofu and sprouts is, like, required.
That's how much?
Just between you and me, there's a $3 off coupon in this month's Total Men's Fitness magazine. Your wife Betty subscribes to that, right? Anyhow, clip that and it's $19.99 even. Whoa, looks like you maxed out on all your credit cards. Bring cash, okay?
You imagine that we live in an age of reason, and the global warming alarm is dressed up as science, but it's not science, it's propaganda.
There's no direct evidence which links 20th century global warming to anthropogenic greenhouse gases.
We're just being told lies, that's what it comes down to.
You can't say that CO2 will drive climate. It certainly never did in the past.
If the CO2 increases in the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas, then the temperature will go up. But the ice core record shows exactly the opposite. So the fundamental assumption, the most fundamental assumption of the whole theory of climate change due to humans is shown to be wrong.
The whole thing stinks.
He wasn't talking about race, he was talking about survival. We've now passed 7 billion on this planet. When I was born, it was a little over 2. Food prices are rising, oil is ending. When our resources end in 20 years, given everything that we know of our species, do you really think we're going to just share?
So your answer to that is some kind of genocide?
No, it is not. It is not genocide. Our answer to this is Janus. Janus consists of a protein and an amino acid. Independently of each other, they're harmless. But when they're brought together in the subject, they act as a genetic trigger that prevents chromosomal division. The cell targeted can no longer replicate itself and is thereby rendered useless. The change is permanent and hereditary.
And which cells are targeted?
Those that control fertility, Becky. The purpose of Janus is to sterilize. The purpose of Janus is to sterilize the entire human race. We predict the population will plateau at 500 million in just under 100 years. By then, normal breeding rates should resume, but on a planet that will feel empty.
Perhaps the most startling thing that I can share with you is that all of the conspiracy theories that you've ever heard about one world government, about the UN takeover of the world, all of those conspiracies have now been laid to rest. There's nothing conspiratorial about it. It's all public.
It is critical to understand that the entire structure of this system can only produce one thing in the long run: debt. It doesn't take a lot of ingenuity to figure this scam out. For every single dollar produced by the central bank is loaned at interest. That means every single dollar produced is actually the dollar plus a certain percent of debt based on that dollar. And since the central bank has the monopoly over the production of the currency for the entire country, and they loan each dollar out with immediate debt attached to it, where does the money to pay for the debt come from? It can only come from the central bank again, which means the central bank has to perpetually increase its money supply to temporarily cover the outstanding debt created, which in turn, since that new money is loaned out at interest as well, creates even more debt. The end result of this system without fail is slavery, for it is impossible for the government and thus the public to ever come out of the self-generating debt. The founding fathers of this country were well aware of this.
Few years, increasing numbers of commentators, including Max Kaiser, have been predicting the collapse of the US dollar, a collapse that could be closer than you think. America currently faces a very real impending threat: China. China accounts for more global trade than anyone else on the planet, and most of that trade happens in US dollars, keeping demand for the dollar high and overseas trade at low costs. Not only this, but China holds around $1.3 trillion of US debt, a debt accumulated by China's stockpile of dollars from international trade, which they lend back to the US at ridiculously low interest rates. But what happens if China decide to stop playing the game? Well, in some respects, they already have. In November 2013, the People's Bank of China announced the country's new plan. Yi Gang, deputy governor of the central bank, explained that it's no longer in China's favour to accumulate foreign exchange reserves. This means they won't be buying any more US debt. Bad news, America. And this isn't the only move that China is making. China has plans to have about a third of its foreign trade settled in yuan, the country's currency, in 2015. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency, meaning it is held in significant quantities by governments and institutions for foreign exchange, and is most importantly used for the majority of oil trades, coined the petrodollar system, which has been enforced since the 1970s. The US has a track record of toppling any country that tries to act against it, but over the past year, China has been teaming up with countries around the world to dispel trading in US dollars. It's a game changer. In February 2013, the US imposed sanctions restricting Iran's ability to trade with international entities, and with China being Iran's top trade partner, the country has been able to flood Iran with cheap consumer goods in exchange for oil. China is able to take advantage of US sanctions, with some 70 Chinese businesses currently active in Iran, which cover not only the oil sector, but key trades such as construction, transportation, and manufacturing. Next up in March, China and Brazil agreed to cut out the US dollar for approximately half of their trade, followed by Australia in April, announcing they would be abandoning the US dollar for trade with China, using Chinese yuan instead. These subtle moves, of course, make no immediate significant change, but in the long run could have severe consequences for the US government. One big move has surfaced with the collaboration of BRICS, the 5 big emerging economies of the world: Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. The countries have come together to work on a new $50 billion development bank to rival the World Bank and IMF. The project aims to represent part of the new paradigm, reflecting a shift in economic power away from the West, and provide initial funding for infrastructure projects worth $4.5 trillion. Questions on the funding and location of this new bank are still pending. Analysts have predicted that China will hold dominance over the other developing countries, but why should this be the case? Well, simply, they make more global trade and import more oil than anyone else across the world. Plus, their economy is about 20 times the size of South Africa and 4 times the size of Russia and India. They are big players when it comes to global economic power. The most recent move comes from Russia's annual economic meet in St. Petersburg at the beginning of May 2014, where they announced that Gazprom, the Russian state-backed gas giant, has signed a $400 billion 30-year deal to supply gas to China. Trade is predicted to be carried out directly between the countries' respective currencies, bypassing the US dollar entirely. All this goes back as far as 2011, when China and Japan agreed to start direct trading of their currencies, and similar agreements involving Germany, Chile and the United Arab Emirates have all emerged since. China has spent years accumulating US dollars to keep the value of it up and keep the yuan down, enabling cheap international trade. But it seems they've changed their mind. China are chipping away at the dollar's role as the world's reserve currency. But what will they stockpile instead? The signs point towards gold. How much gold China has is unknown, but Bloomberg reported that Switzerland sent more than 80% of its gold and silver bullion and coin exports to Asia back in January 2014. According to a column on the goldstandardnow.org, China surpassed the US 7 years ago in gold production, and 3 years from now, it will own more gold than the US federal government. The Chinese government has recently removed all restrictions on personal ownership of gold, legalised domestic gold exchange traded funds, is currently purchasing 100% of domestic gold mine production, has imported over 750 tonnes of gold, 27% of global output in the last 12 months, publicly states its intentions to add 1,000 tonnes per year to its central bank gold reserves, and is buying major stakes in foreign gold mining companies. So, could China kill the US dollar? Well, the low interest rates that the US currently enjoys being the world's reserve currency is in jeopardy if other countries around the world decide to stop trading in US dollars. Alternatively, if China decides that it's no longer content in holding the $1.3 trillion of debt it currently holds for the US, well, that spells trouble. With interest rates currently standing at an unfathomable low 2.477% due to being lent money from other countries on the cheap, a rise to just 6% would mean the federal government would be paying out around $3 trillion a year just in national debt. But the biggest issue lies in the $441 trillion sitting in interest rate derivatives, an amount of money bet on the movement of interest rates, which, if it continues to soar from moves like this from China, big problems will brew for the US. The four big banks of America, JP Morgan Chase, Citibank, Bank of America and Goldman Sachs, hold around $40 trillion in derivatives each, exposing them to devastation should a shift happen. The future depends largely on China and China's agreement to hold US debt and trade in US dollars worldwide. If the world moves away from trading in US dollars, the demand will disappear and the interest rates will explode the entire US financial system into chaos.
While the USA goes around the world expounding on the virtues of its way of life, it is obvious that those in charge place little value on human life. They are willing to kill thousands, even millions, for profit, for power, for money, for oil and resources. The USA doesn't even value the lives of its own citizens. Witness the numerous testings of weapons, drugs, medications, pesticides, GMOs, subterfuge on its own population. One of the few developed nations that fails its citizens totally in the area of the right to adequate health care. Those who cannot afford it do not get it. Financially, mentally, and physically robbed by politicians, banksters, and industry without the capacity to understand how to care for themselves, they end up homeless on the street, begging for money, being robbed, being beaten, being hungry, committing crimes because they have no choice. Then there are the families. The lives of these families are becoming pure hell. There is violence, destruction, and threats. An all-out attack from the health system, the government, law enforcement, and even neighbors.
The state itself is ultimate. If there's nothing, no law higher than the state, and if there's no law higher than the state, there's no appeal against it.
They're training them for the collective, and a collective mindset, and a dependency mindset.
And it seems that they, again, want to have people be uneducated, so then they do become wards of the state. They're dependent on the government to provide everything for them.
So, meet the mentally ill of the USA and the victims of the many who go without being cared for. Meet the disposable people. The political pundits and politicians have started a mantra about gun control in order to gain more control over the population. It's not the guns, stupid. It's the lack of care for your own people. It is suggested that the USA get its own house in order before dictating to the rest of the world. Use the many blessings and resources of the land, the people, for your own, and not for trotting around the globe, killing others for profit, whilst those at home suffer. The capitalist system sees people as a disposable commodity, to be thrown out if not productive or useful in some way. The American dream. You have to be asleep to believe it.
Once people figure it out, they're going to do what people everywhere do. They're going to start protesting, and they're going to start revolting. And when that happens, that's when the powers that be feel threatened, and they use the power that they have.
Meet the USA's disposable people. Oil-soaked and fracked. Food poisoned. Inoculated by tainted vaccines. Fukushima radiation. Trapped by mainstream media propaganda. Spied upon by government. Impoverished. Murdered. A homeless empire created by and destroyed by the U.S. military-industrialist complex. Treated like garbage. Promulgated by the same shady cast of characters responsible for embroiling us in the endless war on terror in the first place. Americans, the disposable people.